This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live.
Hello and welcome to the Sunday Lunch Show on Teachers Talk Radio with Graham Stanley. Today I'll be looking at trauma-informed pedagogy and the use of humour with my special guest Mehrdad Mohaheri.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live. Tune in live at ttradio.org, or to join in the conversation, download the Podbean app and search Teachers Talk Radio. Follow the hashtag TTRadio. Tune in, talk it out with Teachers Talk Radio.
Hello and welcome to the Sunday Lunch Show. As I mentioned earlier, I'll be talking to Mehrdad Mohaheri about trauma-informed pedagogy and the use of humour and comedy today. Mehrdad is a trauma-informed pedagogy specialist who is based in Scotland. As a doctoral researcher in education at the University of Strathclyde, he is investigating the intersection of humour and trauma-based pedagogy among refugees and asylum seekers. Mehrdad has 16 years of ESOL, that's English for Speakers of Other Languages, teaching experience, and is currently serving both ESOL Scotland and the British Council. His career spans work with other notable organisations, including Barnardo's Refugee EAP, SCILT, and Kaplan International Pathways. His distinctive approach combines academic expertise earned through a BA in English translation and an MA in English teaching with practical CELTA certification and hands-on experience, serving diverse student populations. Mehrdad specialises in developing innovative teaching methodologies that creates engaging, culturally sensitive learning environments for students from varied backgrounds, particularly those navigating challenging life transitions. And as well as my chat with Mehrdad, because it's relevant, I thought it would be interesting to include an excerpt of a previous show with Jamie Keddy when I talked to him about stand-up comedy and storytelling, and that will come up in my conversation with Mehrdad. And I'll be talking to Mehrdad about his experience after the Teachers Talk Radio News.
Hi secondary school teachers, we're Apps for Good, and we give schools like yours free introductory computing courses. Our courses are for everyone, including those who aren't computing teachers, and they're fully equipped with resources mapped to the UK computing curriculums. Independent learning is central to our courses. Your students will develop essential and digital skills by working in teams to create prototype apps. We'll even connect you with industry volunteers to give real-world feedback. Let's empower every young person you teach to shape their future with technology. Speak to us at www.appsforgood.org.
Did you know that every year, half of disadvantaged children who are top attainers at primary school don't go on to achieve top GCSE maths results? At Axiom Maths, we exist to change that. Our fully funded programme helps schools nurture young mathematicians through weekly face-to-face maths circles, where pupils tackle challenging and exciting problems outside the national curriculum. With just under £3,000 annual funding, expert training and quality resources, we give schools everything they need to inspire the next generation of mathematical thinkers. Want to make a difference? Visit axiommaths.com today and join over 400 schools delivering maths circles across the UK.
Meet 2025 BET Award winner Kialo EDU, the 100% free tool for thoughtful, inclusive classroom discussion. On Kialo, students contribute instantly and simultaneously to create an interactive map of a discussion, deepening their subject knowledge and enhancing their critical thinking skills. Set tasks, track participation, and provide personalized feedback in just a few clicks. And since it's compatible with all your favorite LMS platforms, It slots seamlessly into your existing workflow. Over 1 million educators and students are already using Kialo to make the world a more thoughtful place. Join them today at kialo-edu.com.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
Website The Conversation features details of new research which suggests that parents may not play a role in the development of maths anxiety amongst their children. Existing research indicates that maths anxiety is present amongst pupils in their first years of primary school, and that it interferes with maths learning and performance. This new research, conducted in collaboration with 3 universities in Italy and Loughborough University in the UK, looks into the role parents play in the development of the anxiety. The research followed 126 children from Italy from the age of 3 to 8. Assessing their maths skills and their level of maths anxiety at key points. Parental maths anxiety was measured at the start of the study. The results indicate that having a parent with higher levels of maths anxiety did not make it more likely that their children would also have it. This is different to general anxiety. However, the research did show that children of parents with maths anxiety did less well at maths. In preschool children's numeracy, skills were lower if their parents were more anxious about maths, and those children continued to have lower maths attainment by the age of 8. But, unlike reading, where research clearly indicates that parental engagement with it increases children's level of skill, maths is more complicated. Sometimes parental involvement made things worse. Other things like playing number games and counting had minimal effect. Full details of the summary of the research can be found at theconversation.com. In related news, maths appears in a story from the Monmouthshire News, which says that the new research indicates that 71% of parents in Wales couldn't pass grade 4 GCSE maths. When given a sample question, a survey of 2,000 parents and carers found that only 21% got it right, with 34% admitting they didn't know the answer and 37% getting it wrong. The results came from a survey conducted by Flash Learning, and it also showed that 65% of parents believe supporting their children with GCSE homework resulted in them needing to do their homework first. 57% of Welsh parents also believe that they would fail the exam if they sat it today. The Mail Online covers more reaction to the Netflix drama Adolescence. This time it is comments from Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson as she called for more male teachers to provide strong, positive male role models. Speaking at the inaugural Festival of Childhood in London, Phillipson said boys needed to be raised with the strength to reject hatred being spread online. She echoed recent warnings from former England football manager Gareth Southgate and police chiefs who have cautioned about the impact social media influencers can have. The festival was hosted by Children's Commissioner Dame Rachel de Souza, and Miss Phillipson spoke at length about the dangers of disinformation, toxic role models and hatred, and stressed the importance of thinking analytically, weighing up arguments and reasoning. Ms Phillipson did acknowledge that the responsibility does start at home with parents, but added, "I want more male teachers, teaching, guiding and leading the boys in our classrooms." The BBC covers the judicial review of the government's policy of adding VAT to private school fees. Barristers representing Chancellor Rachel Reeves, HMRC, and the Department for Education said private school parents paying their fair share would help raise standards for children who attended state schools. The judicial review was brought by 3 separate groups, including parents of children with special educational needs and disabilities and low-paying faith schools. The groups claim the policy is discriminatory and incompatible with human rights law. Full details of the story can be found on the BBC News website. The hearing decision is expected at a later date. Finally, BBC Breakfast covered the opening of an exhibition at the Food Museum in Stowmarket, Suffolk, which offers visitors the opportunity to sample semolina, pink custard and turkey Twizzlers. The showcase of school dinners through the ages from the 1940s to the present day will help visitors learn about the history of school meals policy. The museum's director, Jenny Cousins, said school dinners were a cross-generational experience, and that whilst the food tasting added a bit of fun, there was a serious side of the history of why we feed children at school. The exhibition will remain at the museum until February 2027. This has been Teachers Talk Radio News with Joe Fox.
Hello and welcome back, everyone. I am very pleased to have with me today my guest, Mehrdad Mohajeri. How are you, Mehrdad?
Yeah, thank you so much, Graham, for having me. And it's a really lovely day in Glasgow. It's sunny and everyone is happy.
Wonderful. Who could ask for more?
Including me. Yes, including me.
So, Mehrdad, I would like to start, as I usually do, by asking you how you became a teacher, how you became involved in education. What was it for you? Was it something that started quite early, or did you fall into it by accident?
Actually, it was a mix of accident and also enthusiasm. Started since childhood. And I it's about roughly 20 years that I've been involved with English language and English teaching. These are specifically my expertises in trauma-informed pedagogy that develops through my current PhD research at the University of Strathclyde. So I worked with British Council, Kaplan International Pathways, and various community organizations that I developed effective methods for engaging diverse learners. And right now, currently, I'm working with British Council and Glasgow ESOL forums that they are mainly, especially about Glasgow ESOL forums that are mainly working with migrants and refugees and asylum seekers. And at the same time, my PhD is about investigating the use of humor, comedy, and other creative techniques and see how these techniques might be effective for refugees who are learning English language, with the particular focus with those who are suffering from trauma. How humor specifically can be helpful for those learners to experience post-traumatic growth as soon as possible, and also keep that journey of learning English language as easy as possible for them. I'm on the 3rd year PhD at the University of Strathclyde, and it's coming to an exciting part that I actually my research was on ethnography. That mostly I try to observe different ESOL's context, colleges, even drama classes. And what I simply did at the very beginning was observing laughter and see different times that laughter took place. And I tried to take note of it and record. The next stage was analyzing why that laughter took place and see whether that kind of laughter that happened was helpful for learning English language or for the safety of the learners. That is a very, very important step for trauma-informed pedagogy, giving safety to the learners. And
I think
the next stage,
Sorry to interrupt. I think we're moving ahead really quickly. What I'd like to do
Yeah,
is
yeah,
maybe
sorry.
step back a little bit,
Yeah, sorry,
just to find
sorry
out.
to say this, yeah.
That's okay. You know, it's fascinating, and I'm looking forward
Yeah,
to hearing a lot more about this. But
yeah.
how did you become involved in first maybe to understand a little bit more about what trauma-informed pedagogy is and how you became interested and involved in it? Why did you decide to study that?
Yeah. I've always been really interested to know how learning English language might take place from the lens of a foreigner, or it's better to say from the
Mhm,
lens of a foreign language learner.
mhm,
Sometimes we
mhm.
try to differentiate second language learners and foreign language learners.
Yeah.
And we can add some other um, challenges together with foreign language learners if that person experience some life challenging experiences like war, like domestic abuse and such. Um, it was really helpful for me. And at the same time, social justice was something that has always been uh, a concern that I myself personally, as a human being, really would love to take a tiny step in that regard. So, all in all, together with my passion about creative techniques in English teaching and learning English language, um, somehow took me to that journey of trauma-informed pedagogy. And it is
And did you
something that I am
spend,
now.
Maridad, did you spend a lot of time in classrooms working with learners who
Yes.
had suffered trauma before
Yeah.
you decided to then move on and take a PhD in this, for example?
So before that, I was mostly with Iranian students. Some of them are, um, some of them are currently now in Glasgow or some other places who already just suffer from trauma. All of us in our life
Mhm.
experience trauma in different ways. But yeah, so first of all, something that was really interesting to me was Persian speakers who wanted to learn English language. And after that, I had the chance. I arrived in the UK exactly the time that uh, the Russia and Ukraine war took place,
Mhm.
and we had a large number of displaced Ukrainian people arriving in the UK, especially in Glasgow. So I had the chance to see those, and also had the chance to observe their ESOL classes for about a year with an organization which is called SILT, uh, who organize ESOL classes for Ukrainian people. I had some ideas about trauma, but it wasn't that much uh, deep. So I observed that. At the same time, I put theories that I was learning together with the practice, some observations. So I noticed sometimes some topics that inadvertently happen in the classes, the reaction of the teacher and also the reaction of the students. And it was really interesting for me. See how we can pass those challenges. Of course, I have many examples that happened. Um, and I myself personally, both as a teacher and also observer, or even as a learner, found it really challenging. And every time it was a really big question for me how we can smoothly pass those. So if you ask a Ukrainian refugee who has just experienced war about the summer holiday, how the reaction
Mm.
could be. or if you ask some geographical areas and specifically name some political figures like Vladimir Putin or Russia, and even Russian language was somehow welcomed with mixed messages. Some were from Russian background. At the same time, there were some other who hated that. So you were in that kind of context.
So I imagine it's to have that group of people together in a classroom is a tricky thing for a teacher to navigate.
Definitely true. Definitely true. Yeah. So especially as I mentioned about some triggering topics, that somehow take the learner flashback to previous memories, even the fond memories of the past.
Yeah,
somehow might be triggering for them, or even some simple context of home. So sometimes I remember once I asked one Ukrainian students to use simple past. So I say, in my previous life, I did such and such. So consider living in Ukraine as previous life and new life in the UK.
Wow.
Yes.
So trauma-informed pedagogy, is there a lot of studies, or has there been a lot of research about this, or is it a kind of a relatively new area of language learning, for example, and teaching?
I don't think that it will be a new area. I myself personally find mine as a new person in that world. But I found it really, really important for the teachers specifically to be aware that learners that you're dealing with cannot be considered as people that you see daily, and you see that okay, you can easily use different scenarios for them. So as I told you, for my PhD, I used humor and comedy, and I found that okay, that might be really great to use that. And there was one part of my journey that I needed to do an interview with some refugees. I remember once there was one ESOL teacher that wanted to facilitate that process of interview and said, okay, hi, this is Merdad, this is Hussein. Okay, Merdad want to ask you some question about humor. You can't imagine what the response from that refugee was. He said, there was no humor in my life. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh my God, how you could just start that kind of process? I myself personally should have expected that reaction, and I couldn't ask why. I couldn't say, okay, why you have that kind of pessimistic attitude? For sure, you need to put yourself in the shoes of that person that went through that rough patch of coming to the UK or some other places. And then you decide whether that person, you're the rightful person to ask them that. For sure, you have some nice times in your life, and look on the bright side. No, it's hard. So giving safety, building up trust is something that I learned. It was already there. I learned that it's really important. First of all, make the foundation of safety, build up trust, and then go for some other aspect.
Yes, I can only imagine. How do you build up this foundation of safety then? I'm sure it's has a lot of things to it, but Just if you can give us an idea of how you would start to approach that.
As I told you, there are numerous ways, but something that I'm specifically focusing on these days is how drama activities might be really helpful to let the learners experience the present time. And this is something that I was inspired from one of the pioneers of drama teaching and learning, especially once she did it in the US among the refugees in, I think, if I'm not mistaken, 1940s or something. Her name is Viola Spolin. So she focused mainly on this situation that whatever you do, you need to take the learner the present time and do not let, just keep that learner so much engaged that you do not let them think about the future, concerning future or the past. So especially today, I did one activity in one of my classes. That's really simple. It's about going and freezing. First of all, I asked them that, okay, whenever I asked them first to just go around in a circle, and then we did some kind of breathing. And then I said, whenever I say go, just walk. Whenever I say freeze, you stop. So we did that. And after that, say, let's do that a little bit different. Whenever I say freeze, you need to go. Whenever I say go, you need to freeze. And at the same time, I tried to just act that. For example, it was really at the time that I said, go. And I did that kind of act of going. So that kind of activity in particular just make the learner just think about now. Forget about some other things that might happen. And this is definitely the mission of drama and also improvisation. So there was another aspect that I work on that is called improvisation. So I understood that is and also teacher is an artist. Is in some aspect teacher is a comedian. In some aspect teacher is an artist. So we wear different masks, and notice how effective these creative activities, how art can be really helpful in trauma-informed pedagogy. So this is my special focus when it comes to doing trauma-informed pedagogy.
Fantastic. That activity you've just outlined sounds a little bit like a really good warmer. So
definitely.
Or an icebreaker, really, something that will get the students up and about, meeting each other. When they get confused between freeze and go, they'll start smiling,
yes, exactly.
etc.
Yeah. So I can give you one specific example that I did was about. So the theme of the lesson was about ordering and complaining in a restaurant. I myself personally acted as a joker. So the name Joker is taken from the idea of the theater of the oppressed, or it's better to say pedagogy of the oppressed by Paulo Freire.
Mm-hmm.
So what the Joker does is acting as a facilitator. You give them the direction and you try to just stay away a little bit. And you see that it might be necessary, you try to give them a hint. So I acted as a joker. So I wore a kind of hat of a sous chef, and I acted that. So I tried to add some touches of humor in different parts of the ordering and complaining. So what I did was that we asked them to just put in an atmosphere, to be in the atmosphere of a restaurant. I played the music. let me tell you that music plays an important role in trauma-informed pedagogy. So I did play a music of a restaurant, let's say that time, with the mellow music of a jazz, something that I like. And after that, so they were in different tables. It was their ordering time that I tried to just go in different places, different tables, and ask them for different things that they want. Before that, they had some orders on the menu with some dialogues that was also ready, that especially for some learners with less proficiency of English language, it might be a little bit hard to ask them to be funny as well in the classes. So the dialogue was already there. All they needed to do was reading from that. Something else that was really helpful, both for me as a teacher and learner, it was putting emojis in front of each dialogue. So expressing your feeling is another aspect of trauma-informed pedagogy, letting the learners express their feelings. So when it comes to just showing laughter, happiness, anger, excitement, I put that emoji and I said, you can exaggerate that. So it is the time that they kind of open up, that learner tries and will be just find the opportunity to open up. So they did that. I was in that kind of game and I understood that, oh, everyone is engaged. In the middle, there were two mother and son. The mother was more outgoing and extroverted and tried to nudge her son to also participate. The son was a little bit shy and reserved. But after a while, when he noticed that everyone is just enjoying themselves, surprisingly, he tried to participate as well. And I said to myself, okay, the job is done. You know, it was the time that they couldn't notice how time flew by. They were enjoying themselves at that time.
Yeah.
And it
that
is
must
like
be so rewarding for you as a teacher to, once you do have the, once you have built the confidence and they have the,
exactly.
once they have the confidence and the trust and they start opening up, that must be quite a breakthrough.
Yeah, definitely true. Yeah, and it happened, and I was really, really glad that it took place. Yes.
You mentioned earlier that you like to use humor and comedy. How do you differentiate? Do you differentiate between them, or are they two parts of the same thing?
Yes. You know, humor is something that is more spontaneous. Comedy, on the other hand, is something that is more planned. So you can take the example of a situation that you are walking on the street and suddenly is a snowy day and suddenly you slip and fall. So maybe you and other people laugh. You didn't plan it. So on the other hand, you see a different scenario that Charlie Chaplin did in one of his movies. He intentionally set that scenario. That is comedy. But the one that happened for me that I didn't plan and it was spontaneous was humor.
Okay.
Something that I tried to do was experiencing and also observing those spontaneous humor that happened in different ESOL classes and accentuating those scenarios into a real life and also accentuating that and also imitating those scenarios in the lesson plans for the future uses of English teaching. So they were different, and also there were different themes of humor that I observed that I don't know whether we can have time to talk about it. So let's say observational comedy was one of the most frequent, or observational humor, observational humor was the most frequent theme that took place in most of the ESOL classes. So by observational humor, I mean the situation that happens, the humor is already there. It's like the air that you breathe in the atmosphere. This is the art of you as a teacher or a normal person to grab it. And after that, you find two elements of delivery and timing. You find the right time, and then boom, you deliver that. And that is the successful situation that humor might bring about in the classes.
Can you give an example of when that has happened or when you've done that in class, for example?
There were some situations that you could see mostly somehow the dynamics of the teacher and the student could change based on the proficiency of the learners. As you could expect, most of the humor were in, let's say, at the beginner classes were based on nonverbal humor or nonverbal cues, or very, very simple things, or some misunderstanding that came about by some words, or some simple words. For example, I don't know, there was one student talking about, and it was the matter of translanguaging as well. That was really interesting to me. There was a beginner class of mixed students from different nationalities. Some of them were from Ukraine, some from Middle East. So totally different cultures and languages. So there was one situation that one person from, if I'm not mistaken, Syria was talking about his life. He said that, okay, I have a wife, 2 kids, and I'm so glad, Alhamdulillah. This is the word. It means thank God. I want to show my satisfaction.
Yeah.
Or we can say that I want to do such and such thing, inshallah, God willing.
Yeah.
The most exciting part was the reaction of those Ukrainian students, that they didn't know this, and they laughed after that. So I consider it as an observational comedy or observational humor that took place from the students. We call it student-initiated humor. But mostly the humor in the ESOL classes started from the teachers, that I called it teacher-initiated humor. So the teacher set the scene and didn't know what might happen, and then the student laughed. And also there were some situations that maybe I called it nervous laughter, because the teacher was in authority. Maybe that teacher was, the thing that the teacher said was not funny at all, but because that teacher was in authority, the other students laughed. But yeah, there were different scenarios about that situations as well. When the proficiency of level of English language went further, you could notice that even that humor situation became more sophisticated and elaborate, and it was more idiomatic based. So I remember maybe, intermediate and upper intermediate classes. Oh my God, I forgot it. Yeah, I think it was a kind of job interview that it was really, really helpful. I noticed how humor could be really helpful. So job interview is a highly stressful scenario for every person, specifically for learners of English language in the new context. So there was a scenario that they needed to do that kind of drama role play. So the teacher set the scene. There was one student. Yeah, I remember the teacher, because it was a lower level of English language, the teacher was interviewer and the learners were interviewees. So it was the really interesting time that the student initiated the humor. And it said that, and first of all, the teacher wanted to set some adjectives that would be really productive and give positive impression to the interviewer. The teacher asked to name some of the positive adjectives. So friendly, hardworking. And one student said, sarcastic. I say, oh my God. So the student did know that what he's using. He said that, okay, sarcastic or sarcasm. Is it? And then the teacher said, okay, is it a negative or positive humor? Or there were some situations that, and in that situation, I remember there was one learner who wanted, the scenario was, I think the job advertisement of being a cleaner. Oh no, there was something that you were supposed to talk about your previous experiences. So the student said that, okay, I'm working as a cleaner and I'm really, really happy about that. Whenever I'm using that brush, I kind of feel like that I am the king of the universe, and yeah. And so it was something that we call it the using comedy or humor as a kind of defense mechanism, or we call it self-enhancing humor. So that it might be challenging. That being a cleaner has its own challenges, but you try to see that differently. This is something that I also did study on, that we call it dark comedy. That you see that even in highly stressful conditions, you're in the intensive care unit, and you see that the doctors in a highly stressful condition are using different jokes with each other as a kind of defense mechanism. And it
relieves tension as well, doesn't it?
Definitely. And yeah, definitely. And it was something that I also observed, and I thought how it can be really, really helpful for learners to use that. Whenever you make a mistake, even inside the classroom or outside the classroom, instead of just feeling embarrassed, you just take it, you can pass it by a laughter and say, oh, I made that mistake. Oh, oop, I'm just you pass it.
Hi secondary school teachers, we're Apps for Good, and we give schools like yours free introductory computing courses. Our courses are for everyone, including those who aren't computing teachers, and they're fully equipped with resources mapped to the UK computing curriculums. Independent learning is central to our courses. Your students will develop essential and digital skills by working in teams to create prototype apps. We'll even connect you with industry volunteers to give real-world feedback. Let's empower every young person you teach to shape their future with technology. Speak to us at www.appsforgood.org.
Did you know that every year, half of disadvantaged children who are top attainers at primary school don't go on to achieve top GCSE maths results? At Axiom Maths, we exist to change that. Our fully funded program helps schools nurture young mathematicians through weekly face-to-face maths circles, where pupils tackle challenging and exciting problems outside the national curriculum. With just under £3,000 annual funding, expert training and quality resources, we give schools everything they need to inspire the next generation of mathematical thinkers. Want to make a difference? Visit axiommaths.com today and join over 400 schools delivering maths circles across the UK.
Meet 2025 BET Award winner Kialo EDU, the 100% free tool for thoughtful, inclusive classroom discussion. On Kialo, students contribute instantly and simultaneously to create an interactive map of a discussion, deepening their subject knowledge and enhancing their critical thinking skills. Set tasks, track participation, and provide personalized feedback in just a few clicks. And since it's compatible with all your favorite LMS platforms, it slots seamlessly into your existing workflow. Over 1 million educators and students are already using Kialo to make the world a more thoughtful place. Join them today at kialo-edu.com.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
So much to this, I can see. What about being inspired by well-known comedians, stand-up comedians, or other types of people that either in their own culture or in the new culture in the UK where they are, that the students come across? Do you find yourself being drawn to those, or trying to sort of see if there's anything that is done there that you can use as well?
I'm really terrible with names. I'm sorry if I just tell the names differently. But yeah, talking of dark comedy, I remember there was one stand-up comedian whose name, if I'm not mistaken, was Tig Notara, who was really, really successful comedian. And in the middle of her career, she discovered that she got breast cancer. And she wanted, that is a traumatic time of anyone's life. And one of her successful stand-up was the one that she started by this dialogue. Hi, everyone. I got breast cancer. And everyone laughed. Say, yeah, seriously, I got breast cancer. I was diagnosed with breast cancer and did such and such and such. And it was a highly successful stand-up that brought dark comedy in the stage, and see how this situation can be really helpful to let the others know that, okay, you're not alone. There are so many people like you that have such situations. Or about improvisation. So I am really, I've always been in love with some of the work of Robin Williams, the king of improvisation. And it was too early for him to go, really. And improvisation is something that is really, really helpful, not necessarily in learning English language, but some other scenarios as well, that you let the learners know that not all the situations are planned. You know, you need to think on your feet and do this and that. So they are different as a kind of warm-up. Something that, for example, I did today was this, that I gave them an object. I said that, okay, this is an object in your hand. For example, I don't know, anything, a book. So you give them a book and say that, okay, you can use it in different situations. You can mold it and you can use it differently. Someone use it as a pillow. Another person use it as a ball. Another person use it as a tennis racket. Another person use it as a shaver. You know, just coming up with different ideas that just happens and you did not think about it. So that is improvisation.
It sounds a bit like there is this lateral thinking game about you give people a brick and you ask them to come up with as many different uses for a brick or whatever object it is as they can think of.
Exactly. And it does work. You know, you want to teach them emotions. You already did that and say, okay, so now you're in different groups. Everyone just makes a tableau together of emotion, and other people might guess. You know, this is the improvisation that comes about. That Viola Spolin said, throwing the learner or that person into the moment of now. Maybe that time might be a little bit less confident, but after that, that person does that kind of acting. That we call it also sometimes doing some kind of things that, of course, it might be really, sometimes it might be challenging, but clowning is another aspect that might be really helpful. So we call it the art of clowning and improvisation. There was a book that I forgot the author also worked on that. And the title of the book was The Art of Improvisation, Drama and Clowning. So by clowning means, of course, he tried to put the learners at the stage without any scenario. So do something. Or there were some situations that kind of interactions happens between the audience and the person who performs. So that performer does the next step of their performance based on the reaction that they receive from the audience. And it also happens in teaching as well. So that's why we call a teacher is an artist, and also sometimes is a comedian.
Yeah.
That need to improvise. So based on the needs and interest of the learners, you need to tailor your lesson plan. You have the same, you have the students with the so-called the same level, and but in two different classes, you cannot necessarily use it for both. It's not one size fits all approach. Why? Because you are working with human beings, and human beings are with emotion, and those emotions that go up and down, those hormonal changes might change the moods as well at the same time. So, and
Yeah.
this is the responsibility of the teacher to discover those moments and weigh those possibilities and tailor and see, okay, this is the right time that I can talk about this or talk about that one or not. That is improvisation, in my opinion, as well.
Yeah, you need to be so sensitive to moods and what's happening in the learners' lives, in particular, I imagine, with learners who have suffered trauma.
Yeah, exactly. And even as I told you, there were some situations that um, even or some context or some topics, maybe it's not related to our topic that we are doing now, but we can say, for example, I remember I worked with refugee EAP, where they hold ESOL classes for refugees and asylum seekers. Um, so there were some cultural responsive teaching material that address the real community needs. It was a time that I identified that standard ESOL textbooks that you see mostly have some topics like gap years, dating and relationship, or pop culture. So how can you teach pop culture to a person from a highly conservative society?
Yeah.
Yes, I myself personally say that, okay, sometimes you can say, but you need to tailor with that, because the part of the society, you cannot censor different parts, but you need to say that with more care. And so they do not resonate with many learners. And so you need to create alternative materials that we can focus on local experiences. And yeah, also, for example, the employment scenarios that might be really helpful for them. Yeah, so maybe that kind of topic of gap year specifically might be understandable for a person as a second language learner of English language in European Union, but might not be that much understandable for a person from Vietnam or
Yeah.
I don't know, Cambodia or some other thing. Yeah, so I think this is the art of the teacher to discover that and tailor that kind of lesson accordingly.
Yeah, it's important to select materials that are relevant and to the context and culture of the learners. Which how do you find materials? You said you kind of suggest that teachers can create their own materials, but that's quite time consuming.
It
Are there
definitely is.
materials for these contexts in which you teach that are pre-existing, or do you end up having to always adapt them?
For my job, I had to redesign. Unfortunately, I had to redesign the lessons because I wanted to change it for some scenarios that I can use drama, I can use humor, I can use comedy. So I had to just take different lessons. Let's say from British Council, it's about birthday party. It's already designed, but I had to break it into smaller pieces and add some ideas from the students, from the background of those students as well. So when it comes to talking about celebration, I remember something that might be really noticeable from students from Middle East is Ramadan, the time
Yeah.
that they do fasting. So you need to tailor that kind of context as well. Yes, so the material is already there, but because I wanted to and discover the use of creative technique and see how effective they are in different situations among refugee learners of English language, I had to redesign, not necessarily from the very beginning, from uh, a zero from scratch, but I needed to redesign that. And designing a lesson takes a considerable amount of time,
Of course.
especially about the time that you need to expect some challenging situations that might come about because you are dealing with people that might have the potential of trauma.
Of course, yeah. What about your background? Were you interested in this because you actually have done some drama, some acting, some comedy, or is that something you've developed out of the teaching?
I've always been really in love with comedy and this genre, but something that specifically drawn me into this area was the time that I did stand up in my English classes.
Okay.
And I noticed how stand up can be really helpful for the students to learn the material much easier. And whenever I asked them how the class was, they said, wow, the class was much fun. So the question first was, oh my God, I was a little bit hurt and said, oh my God, they said that my classes are just fun. Did they learn something? But after a while, I noticed, wow, they learn as well.
Yeah.
Um,
It's funny how I've started over the last few years, started coming across a lot more of that. So one of my previous shows was with a teacher educator called Jamie Keddy. I don't know if you know Jamie.
no,
He's
unfortunately
from
not.
Scotland, but he's based in
Wow,
Barcelona in
wonderful.
Spain. And his specialty is storytelling, but
Wow,
he's been doing stand-up. And we had a
wonderful,
show that was all about what an English teacher can learn from a stand-up comedian. And then
wonderful.
a couple of years ago, I was at the Mextisol conference in Guadalajara, and one of the most popular and the best sessions at the conference was a stand-up comedian who gave a workshop on how you can use stand-up for English language teaching.
Wow, wonderful.
And
I
he
really
was
love to know about
fantastic.
that. I really appreciate it if you share the details of that. So I
Yes,
really
I'll
love
find
it.
out his details. I always meant to follow up with him, but I didn't. So I'll go and find out. I can't remember his name, unfortunately, but I'll mention it in the show. But I'll also share the details. I'll find out before this goes
Wow,
live.
perfect. Yeah. And if you just see that from a different perspective, it says that the whole life is comedy, It
Yeah,
depends how you look at it. Maybe when you look closer and closer, I think Charlie Chaplin said, if you look really close, it's tragedy. But when you go away, that's comedy. And he said that humor is tragedy plus time. So when time is in line with the tragedy or trauma, after a while, you laugh at it instead of
yeah.
say, "Oh, that was really traumatic situation for me."
I suppose it's part of the healing process to be able to look back on something and to, with a different lens, if you like, and to be able to not have it affect you as badly as it did when it was happening.
Definitely. And yeah, something that doesn't kill for sure makes you stronger. And
Yeah.
that is the definite, yeah, that is the life lesson that we might get. And specifically about, yeah, that.
So I wondered, there's something that I've come across this week, actually. There's a new TV program, panel show that it has a number of different UK comedians. They put them in a room together for 6 hours. And the idea is that they have to not laugh at the jokes that the
Oh my
others tell
God.
them. And all of the comedians have, their objective is to make the others laugh. And if they laugh once, they get a yellow card. And if they laugh twice, they get a red card, and then they have to sit out. And
Oh
the
my
winner
God.
is the comedian who survives the longest. And as I was
Wow.
watching it, I was thinking, this you could use in class. This is an
Definitely.
idea, quite a funny activity,
Definitely.
perhaps, to adapt to
Definitely.
the English class.
Definitely. It's really, really helpful. You know, even the idea of the laughter itself is something that a lot of studies just had been done on just the phenomenon of the laughter itself. I remember once I talked with one of the academics and said that I'm just studying on laughter itself and see what happens that the laughter comes about. And the idea of laughter and the whole phenomenon is really interesting for me, especially in the context of ESOL classes or some other situation, is that it doesn't need any specific language. There's no barrier with you when it comes to getting to know a new person. You can welcome that person with a simple smile on your face, and you see how much it might go and how effective it is by just wearing that smile on your face. Sometimes we take it for granted, and sometimes we forget in our life how simple it is.
So what you said before about using stand-up in your classes and the students saying that they found it fun, I think if learners are having fun, if they find what they're doing in class enjoyable, they're more likely to learn.
Definitely. At the same time, you need to be resilient enough for different learners. I remember it was the beginning of my PhD, and I had a lot of theories and ideas about drama and role play. So there was one kind of drama activity that is called gibberish talk. So the essence of gibberish talk is that you don't need any specific knowledge of English language, just you talk nonsense. So I use it with a class with a mixed age and mixed background. The younger learners found it hilarious. The elderly ones, however, were hurt a bit. I'm coming
really?
here. They were from Eastern European society that they are a little bit more strict, Not all of them, but you can be wary of this. So, and also some of them find learning English language as an absolute necessity, that I need to learn English language. I remember once I was talking with one of them and say that, okay, please help me, and was just his hand was just shaking, so that I really need learning English language to communicate. So I found it that, okay, I received mixed messages, mixed signals, but if you notice this and little by little take their hands into that area, that, okay, come on, take it easy. Life is not that much serious. And if you are not tolerant of these, you cannot learn. And I always just told them that learning any language is cyclical process, is not linear, that you start from A to Z. And you need to be tolerant to those ambiguities that might take place in that journey. But all in all, having the aspect of fun and entertainment in the context of English classes for sure works wonders. Especially, that's something that I experienced in my career so far.
That activity you mentioned, gibberish talk, it reminds me of something I think I've seen before, which is helpful when you're working on intonation, stress pronunciation, is you ask the learners to speak gibberish, but in the style of someone who is speaking English, for example, or then in the style of someone who's speaking their language.
Definitely.
And it's a way of getting them to notice how the sounds of the language, not just the words and the meaning of the words, but the actual sounds of the language can help towards being understood, for example.
Exactly. And also there's another activity that is called mirror talk, if I'm not mistaken. So one person will become mirror in front of you, and you just they imitate whatever that you do. So it can help both for pronunciation or some other aspect of English language. And these are really these all make English language process even more exciting. And you break those barriers of the previous predetermined conventional sort of learning that, okay, you need to do this. You need to just the other lingual aspects, let's say, or behaviorism, that just repeat, or just do something but based on the response. And behaviors and some other aspects. But that kind of eclectic style of learning for sure is much more effective than some other ways. It's something that you need to give, especially learners from some some learners from that learn English language many years before. You need to give them time. So because it might be a little bit difficult for them. You need to just little by little change that view that they had toward learning different language. I remember while working with Ukrainian students, some of them who learn English language back to Soviet Union era. And I remember that one of them said that they did not call us by our names. We had number 1, 2, 3, like a person who is in prison.
Wow.
Yeah. And specifically, what they called a good teacher was the one that focused more on grammar and vocabulary, something that was somehow normal in the time of grammar translation method and those.
Yeah. I remember a private student I had many years ago who she needed to understand every single word, and she needed it to be translated. And I tried unsuccessfully to persuade her that it wasn't needed, that she could, it wasn't necessary to translate everything, but she needed all of the listening texts, for example, she needed to have them translated, etc. In the end, I decided it was better to just work with what she needed, because this was the method that worked for her. And over time, we were able to move away from it. But certainly in the beginning, I tried unsuccessfully to persuade her not to insist upon that. And she wasn't comfortable or confident without it.
Yeah, no surprise.
Because it was how she learned French.
Exactly.
And she needed it.
Exactly. And that was the time that as I told you, it didn't work at all. That kind of gibberish talk or mirror talk for that class with mixed students with mixed ages, they kind of felt like they ended up in a comedy show. However, they thought that, okay, I'm going to learn English language, not comedy, And
have you ever tried with students to get them to maybe write and perform little sketches, whether they be comic or not?
Yeah, there was one part that I haven't done yet, but as you mentioned, storytelling and puppeteering is something that I notice might be really helpful as well, specifically about puppeteering. You see, some students are really shy to express their emotions. So instead of you talk, that kind of puppet talks, or that storytelling that you don't need to ask them to necessarily retell their real life stories. You give them different scenarios with different characters, and the one that resonates better with them, they might choose. That was something that I did in some part of my project was readers theater. In reader theater, they have different stories in front of them. All they need to do is reading through that. They don't need to stand up and act, but all they need to do is just reading those. So the scenario, just finding a job among the refugees. And there were different scenarios that said that, okay, back home I was a doctor. It's really hard these days. And there was a joke about that. Okay, yeah, you might not die over here. So just take your time. You are a doctor, but blah, blah, blah. So they can understand, oh, this is me. This is something that might happen about me as well. And yeah, it worked a lot. The storytelling, readers theater, puppeteering, and there are some other creative techniques that might be really helpful in learning English among refugees.
With the readers theater, did you have to write the scripts yourself, or were you able to find suitable scripts?
I was able to find a suitable script, but thanks to AI, it helped me a lot. I said, okay, I have these students with these backgrounds. These are their concerns. And I worked with 2 scenarios One of them I remember was doctor's appointment, and another one was an emergency situation of facing with fire. So, and the class was with two versions of intermediate and elementary students. For elementary students, I mostly worked with expressing emotions and different emojis. With the higher level of intermediate levels, I worked with the lexical aspect and idiomatic aspect of the comedy. And it worked a lot. And it was really, really helpful. As I told you, one aspect of trauma-informed pedagogy is letting learners opening up, not that much that you cannot control it, but in a controlled situation, you're letting them open up and express their feelings, express their emotions. Be a great listener. Just you see in some therapies that might happen in positive psychology is that you need a person who can listen to you without judging you.
Yeah.
And this is the time that we need to, the situation and a condition that we need to take into consideration in trauma-informed pedagogy as well. You do not judge them, you let them express themselves, let them express their feelings. And when it comes to just telling their stories, you just listen.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't, maybe that's beside the point, but I remember it was the situation that, so I remember I worked with Ukrainian students. One student was really silent. The other day, she was really active in the class. I asked the other student what the problem is. And she said her city, Bakhmut, was bombarded with the Russian fighters a few minutes ago. And you know what my reaction was? I said, okay, how about his family? I said, his family are okay, are in shelter. I said, wow, that's great. I use it with this facial expression, happiness. Wow, that's great. At least they are fine. And a few seconds after, I said, what did you tell? Her city was bombarded, and her city was her identity, her family, anything. And and I noticed that in this, a part of trauma-informed pedagogy is just merely doing nothing, just listen, and just be a good listener. You don't need to react at all, but be there to listen. Is another thing.
Giving them the opportunity to be able to be heard and
exactly
to say what they need to say to tell someone something, I guess, is very important.
Definitely. It is something that we might need.
Merdad, I want to thank you so much for your time and for sharing your experience and knowledge with everyone today about this. It's been fascinating to talk to you.
Thank you so much for having me, Graham. It was really fascinating to me as well. Thank you.
A great pleasure. Before we go, is there anything else you would like to say that perhaps you haven't had the opportunity to say?
No, thank you so much. Yeah. So I think, when we talk about different things.
How long have you got left before you finish your PhD?
If everything goes well, by December this year,
okay,
I can say goodbye to anything about PhD and start a new chapter of my life, hopefully.
What's next after your studies?
It's hard to tell, but I love both research and teaching, both of them. I really love that. And also I love performance, to be honest.
Fantastic.
Yeah, hope that I can have the opportunity to do all of them. Yeah.
Fabulous. Well, I wish you all the best of luck.
Thank you so much.
Hi, secondary school teachers. We're Apps for Good, and we give schools like yours free introductory computing courses. Our courses are for everyone, including those who aren't computing teachers, and they're fully equipped with resources mapped to the UK computing curriculums. Independent learning is central to our courses. Your students will develop essential and digital skills by working in teams to create prototype apps. We'll even connect you with industry volunteers to give real-world feedback. Let's empower every young person you teach to shape their future with technology. Speak to us at www.appsforgood.org.
Did you know that every year, half of disadvantaged children who are top attainers at primary school don't go on to achieve top GCSE maths results? At Axiom Maths, we exist to change that. Our fully funded programme helps schools nurture young mathematicians through weekly face-to-face maths circles, where pupils tackle challenging and exciting problems outside the national curriculum. With just under £3,000 annual funding, expert training and quality resources, we give schools everything they need to inspire the next generation of mathematical thinkers. Want to make a difference? Visit axiommaths.com today and join over 400 schools delivering maths circles across the UK.
Meet 2025 BET Award winner Kialo EDU, the 100% free tool for thoughtful, inclusive classroom discussion. On Kialo, students contribute instantly and simultaneously to create an interactive map of a discussion, deepening their subject knowledge and enhancing their critical thinking skills. Set tasks, track participation, and provide personalised feedback in just a few clicks. And since it's compatible with all your favourite LMS platforms, it slots seamlessly into your existing workflow. Over 1 million educators and students are already using Kialo to make the world a more thoughtful place. Join them today at kialo-edu.com.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out! Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading!
It's really interesting because I think a lot of people go into stand-up comedy almost assuming they're very similar, sometimes even the same things, that stand-up comedians just tell funny stories, and that can be your undoing, as it was mine.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was a crazy experience. You know, I hadn't, as much as I'd listened to it, I hadn't really taken time to analyze it. And so when I did it for the very first time, I had a 5-minute open mic spot here in Barcelona, which there's a lot of comedy here in English. And I told a funny story. And the story was quite funny. It had moments of humour through it, which is great if you're going to use a story for comedy. But the problem is that there was not enough laughter. There were not enough jokes, and the payoff kind of came at the end. So basically, you have an audience that wants to laugh. They're sitting through, a story for 5 minutes, and the payoff is a punchline at the end. I think this is not a way to approach a story. I don't like thinking of stories as having punchlines. Stories have ways out. Stories have closure. Stories have endings. But jokes have punchlines, very specifically, and I think that when you start to analyse what jokes are, you've got to try and look for maybe 3 laughs per minute when you're preparing. I mean, a lot of comedians will go for one joke every 17 seconds, which I think is something I've heard before. Wow. Yeah. I mean, my approach to stand-up, it's not that it changed because I never had one, because I'd never tried stand-up until, August last year was the first time I did it. And, I took away the positive. I tried to get over the negative, and it can be quite difficult because the negative, when you bomb, as they call it, it hurts. It hurts a lot. But I tried to build on it and learn a new craft is really what it is. It really is learning a new craft and taking what you've got from understanding how story works and there are transferable elements of it. There's definitely, without any doubt, transferable skills, approaches, techniques. Being on the stage is one of the biggest ones. It's something we're used to as a teacher, as a storyteller, as a conference speaker, as you are. as we are, as a lot of people are, it's very helpful. But I think that what I take away from it is that maybe when we look at stand-up comedy and we compare it with storytelling, it has elements of storytelling, but it also has elements of poetry. Because one of the most important parts of the craft of stand-up comedy is actually about the writing. You spend a huge amount of time writing and scripting and getting every single word. That's the attention to detail. And I think that that's maybe what's less visible when you watch a stand-up comedian at work. And my first time, it was almost identical to yours. And I think every time I've seen a comedian do it for the first time, well, usually they've gone over the time, because you're absolutely right. You 5 minutes is the standard currency of a stand-up spot, and it goes on till 7 or 8, or I think I had about 8 or 9 as well, which I was absolutely shocked at, because I pride myself in my timekeeping. But there's something interesting. I think that you can make parallels with teaching, because if you kind of look at teaching and divide it into either being reactive or preemptive. Reactive is being present and going with what comes up, responding to students' ideas, things that students say, asking questions. That's reactive teaching. And then also, of course, reactive teaching is giving on the spot feedback, drawing attention to things that students say, things that are good, things you want other students to learn from, or error correction, upgrades, all this kind of thing. That's reactive teaching, and that's improvised teaching, and that's what you're doing when you're doing crowd work in comedy. But then, of course, you've got when you're doing your material, which is what you prepare, which is what you script, which is attention to every single word, which is why I would compare it with poetry, because the text can be as dense as a poem. I think that's what we're looking at. That's your preemptive part. And I think that you become very aware of the efficiency. So when you ad lib and you start what you tend to do as a comedian is you want to just waffle. And you've got the jokes prepared, but you can't help filling it in with stuff which does absolutely nothing to your set. And you go over this stage of realizing that. I mean, I've got this. I've got this bit about a baby I do. It was I looked after I held a naked baby once, Graham, and and it was my friend's baby, and she said, "You know what? Have you ever held a naked baby?" And I said, "No, I've never held a naked baby." She said, "Hold my naked baby." And there's something she said, "You've never held a baby till you've held a baby naked," and it was hilarious. And there's something quite incredible about holding a naked baby. This became the basis of my set. And so when I tell this story, the storyteller in me had to contextualize at work on the setup and say why I was actually in this situation in the first place, tell them a bit about my friend, about why I thought this was really important. And it took me about a minute to give the background of this whole, this story. And then after, the stand-up comedian, you learn that you reduce it to the following. A friend of mine's new baby. Don't know where she got it. Bath time. She says, "Do you want to hold my baby?" I said, "No way. It's naked." She says, "Hold my baby." So I held her baby, and she was right enough. He was naked. But then something unexpected happens. It turns out a naked baby is a joy to behold. So you can see that is, reducing the setup of a story, which is something I teach in my course, the importance of paying attention to the setup, which if you don't, people are not going to get your story. But this is different. This is total and utter efficiency of language. You let the audience make up their own, answer the questions, fill in the gaps, get to the punchlines. They don't have to know who this person is, why we're there, why you're holding a baby, but so that can really inform you as a teacher as well. Again, it's efficiency of teacher talk, looking for the right language, looking for the right word choices.
Okay, drawing things to an end now. Thanks for listening. Stand-up comedians are skilled at observation and awareness, storytelling, timing and delivery, and adaptability and resilience. By developing these skills as teachers, I think we can create a more engaging and effective learning environment for our students. Stand-up comedians are real masters of engaging with their audience, and you just need to look at some of them in action to see that. And the best stand-up comedians, I think, use humour, body language, and eye contact to connect with their audience and create very memorable experiences. As teachers, we can definitely learn from those techniques and use them to create a more engaging and interactive classroom. Those techniques include timing and delivery, pauses, changes in tones and body language to build tension, and they do this to create a memorable punchline. And I think we can learn from that as teachers. We can use pauses and changes in tone to emphasize important points and keep our students engaged. We can use our body language as well to show enthusiasm and interest in the material that we're teaching. By using humour, of course, in the classroom, we can create a more relaxed and enjoyable learning environment. And eye contact and body language, I think, two very important things to be able to connect with our students and show that we're invested in their learning. Please get in touch if this is of interest. In particular, if you do use any of these stand-up tricks or techniques in class, I'd love to hear about your own experience and strategies for incorporating them in your classroom. That brings us to the end of today's show. Many thanks for joining me. And remember, there are Teachers Talk radio shows all week, and you can join me again, I hope, next week at the same time. Bye for now.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.
Hi secondary school teachers, we're Apps for Good, and we give schools like yours free introductory computing courses. Our courses are for everyone, including those who aren't computing teachers, and they're fully equipped with resources mapped to the UK computing curriculums. Independent learning is central to our courses. Your students will develop essential and digital skills by working in teams to create prototype apps. We'll even connect you with industry volunteers to give real-world feedback. Let's empower every young person you teach to shape their future with technology. Speak to us at www.appsforgood.org.
Did you know that every year, half of disadvantaged children who are top attainers at primary school don't go on to achieve top GCSE maths results? At Axiom Maths, we exist to change that. Our fully funded programme helps schools nurture young mathematicians through weekly face-to-face maths circles, where pupils tackle challenging and exciting problems outside the national curriculum. With just under £3,000 annual funding, expert training and quality resources, we give schools everything they need to inspire the next generation of mathematical thinkers. Want to make a difference? Visit axiommaths.com today and join over 400 schools delivering maths circles across the UK.
Meet 2025 BET Award winner Kialo EDU, the 100% free tool for thoughtful, inclusive classroom discussion. On Kialo, students contribute instantly and simultaneously to create an interactive map of a discussion, deepening their subject knowledge and enhancing their critical thinking skills. Set tasks, track participation, and provide personalised feedback in just a few clicks. And since it's compatible with all your favourite LMS platforms, it slots seamlessly into your existing workflow. Over 1 million educators and students are already using Kialo to make the world a more thoughtful place. Join them today at kialo-edu.com.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading!